All right, guys, you asked. I'm delivering. I wanted to sit down and make a longer form video to share our breastfeeding journey so far, me and Cora, recap my breastfeeding journey with Kai, and to answer the ever so popular question of why we decided to add in one bottle of formula per day right now. Hi, if you're new here, welcome. I'm Alessandra. I have a 4.5-year-old son Kai and a 4.5-month-old daughter Cora. I'm very open about our breastfeeding journey and just mom life and everything. I put it all out on the table for you guys because I feel like there are just certain things that are not talked about enough, and I hope sharing my experience helps at least just one other person out there. So first and foremost, I think it's important to say that fed is best. I am team fed is best. I feel like there is still a very big stigma, if you will. Is that the right word? I don't know. But I feel like there's still a very big push to breastfeed, and obviously I am somebody who breastfeeds and I am supportive of breastfeeding, but I feel like people who choose not to do that are still somewhat looked down upon by those who do breastfeed or are team breast is best. That's not me. You're not going to get that here. I think a fed baby is best, obviously. There are so many different situations, scenarios where maybe mom's milk doesn't come in. Some people just choose not to breastfeed. There are so many different things that can happen. So I just felt it was important to share my stance there that a fed baby is best. Because you know what? Breastfeeding is freaking hard. I give 5 gold stars to every single person who has ever tried to breastfeed or thought about it or has breastfed their baby for any amount of time. It's a lot. I think it's also important to note this is not medical advice. This is not like my area of expertise as far as breastfeeding goes. I'm not a lactation consultant. So I'm just sharing my experience, my thoughts, our journey so far in hopes that it helps you. So let's rewind and go back to 2019 when I had Kai. I breastfed Kai for 4.5 months. I think we stopped at 4.5 months. And I was proud of that because we had a very rocky start to our breastfeeding journey. Kai was a C-section baby. He latched really well at the hospital, and by really well, I mean like he attached to my boob. He did not have a good latch, but this was not something that anybody ever told me. I didn't know anything about it. So, when we got home, when my milk came in, I was in so much pain breastfeeding him for 3 weeks straight. 3 weeks. I would literally attach him to my boob and have tears running down my face because it hurt so bad. I was super engorged for a long time. I had an oversupply of milk, which, if you don't know what that is, if you've never breastfed before, maybe you're pregnant watching this, an oversupply sounds like it would be a good thing, right? And yeah, like great, you were producing a lot of milk, but it is very painful. Your boobs are constantly engorged. You never get to the point, like at least for me, it took so much longer for me to get to the point where my supply somewhat regulated. But even towards the end of our journey, I was still producing more milk than he needed. So it was very, very painful. And I think that also contributed to his issues with feeding because my letdown was so strong. It would he would be choking on my milk because literally, like, if I took him off my boob, milk would be shooting out of my boob across the room. But between his latch not being great, between my oversupply, it just was a recipe for painful feedings and just disaster. I think it also contributed to him having some tummy issues. It wasn't anything severe or serious, but looking back and going through having another baby, I'm like, yeah, the kid definitely was struggling a little bit because, he just was struggling with sleep. He would cry a lot more. He would have a terrible witching hour and be like inconsolable at the evenings for like the first 3 months. And as first-time parents, you just have no idea what's going on ever. So we kind of just thought it was normal. I never really looked into it anymore. When we got to 4 months, I believe we started introducing a bottle. We introduced a bottle from the start so Josh could help feed Kai, but it was just my expressed milk. When Josh would give Kai a bottle from the very start, and I think this is what contributed to me having an oversupply, was I would use the Haka, the regular Haka, not the new like ladybug one that they have, the regular suction Haka, which I did not know was basically a manual pump, right? So it's suctioning onto your boob, the baby's feeding on the other side. I thought it was just catching my letdown, but it's extracting milk out of your boob. So he was feeding and getting full and stopping, and then my other boob was doing the same amount of work, thinking that he was just eating that much all the time. So your body starts to make more milk because milk supply is supply and demand, right? So whatever you extract out of the boob, the body's going to make more. So I think that contributed to my oversupply, which is why I did not use it this time. So Kaya always had a bottle, never had issues with the bottle because we would have it a couple times a day so that I could have a break and Josh would feed him. We started adding in formula once per day around 4 months, I think. Maybe it was 4.5. So I slowly just started weaning at that point and decided like I was just done. It was a hard journey. I was happy to have made it 4 months. That was a super big accomplishment for us. And he was fine with the formula, so I didn't really feel bad about it. So that was my first experience breastfeeding. Looking back, I wish I had reached out to a lactation consultant. I wish I had taken the time to just learn a little bit more. But again, you're like in the thick of it as a first-time mom, and there's enough things happening that you're trying to learn about. So that's my advice for you. If you're listening to this and you're going to be a first-time mom or you are a first-time mom, get a lactation consultant after the hospital, like after your milk comes in, get them to come to your house or go see one. Was super helpful this time. So this time with baby 2, my sweet Cora, we have had a much smoother experience with breastfeeding because of what I learned with Kai. So obviously had my VBAC, and she latched right away in the hospital as well. It was going really great. I think the third day, like the first week I was home, somewhere around there, my milk came in and it started to be a little bit painful again. So I was like, I am not doing this again. We are not going to do this. I immediately Googled the closest lactation consultants that I could find who could take me immediately. There's this awesome place if you're local in Glastonbury called Oh Baby Lactation Care. So I went there. I took Cora. She was like 5 days old. We went there and we saw them. They were amazing. So she just basically watched me feed her. She weighed Cora before and after the feeding, which she was getting in a lot of milk. She was eating well, but the latch was just painful for me. And she like gave me some positions to try. She helped me help her figure out how to latch better. We knew she didn't have any tongue ties or anything like that. So it was just really peace of mind to have that experience this time postpartum, because when you're like sleep deprived and kind of just thrown home with a new baby, like you can do all the Googling, you can try to figure things out on your own, but it was really just like I paid, I don't remember how much, a few $100 out of pocket. Like our insurance did not cover this to see her. And I'm so grateful that we were able to do that because it just made me feel so much better. And I'll never forget the last thing she said to me before I left that day was, "You are doing an awesome job." Honestly, I would have paid her just to hear her say that, because it's like you second guess yourself so much as a mom. Throw breastfeeding in the mix and it's like you're second guessing things all the time. So highly recommend that. That got us off to a really great start, because after that, it was smooth sailing. My nipples healed up a little bit. She was latching better. She was eating great. She is eating great. So that was like the biggest thing that has been helpful. Number 2, I'm always asked what app I use to track like everything for Cora. So I track feeds for her and I track her sleep. I use the Huckleberry app. It's great. You can track everything on there. You can track diaper changes, bathroom stuff. when they start eating solids, literally everything. I only use it for sleep and eating for her right now. And that's really all I've ever used it for. I'll put a little overlay on the screen here just to kind of show you guys, like you ask about schedule all the time and like what we're doing as far as feeding. For the first, I don't know how many weeks, you'll see, like it's literally just I fed her on demand and it looks like that's all I did for the day. And the reality is that is the early days of having a baby. But now she's on a much more regimented schedule. Her sleep is really good, which if you are interested in the sleep stuff, which I know that's another really hot topic you guys ask about all the time, we are having our sleep consultant Samantha Day Sleep Consulting on the podcast in a couple weeks. So we're going to dive into everything with her. So know that's coming. I would say right around 6 weeks is really when we started to implement more of a routine and a schedule for her. Like 6 to 8 weeks kind of took us to figure out as far as sleep goes and as far as feedings go, because they kind of go hand in hand. So up until now, we've been following the eat, play, sleep routine. That's just what has seemed to work well for her. She generally eats now it's every like 3.5, sometimes 4 hours. Still pretty often. I would say most of the time it's close to every 3 hours still. But, as they're growing and as they're younger, it's more frequently. And that gap gets bigger as they get bigger. They can go longer without eating. So generally during the day, she eats every 3 hours. She will go like 8 to 10 hours at night without eating typically, which I know we are very blessed to have that, but I think that's just because of we've set her up really well for sleep. So that's kind of her schedule. It's not like a set time that we do every day. If she's acting hungry, I will feed her sooner. I kind of just let her guide us and let her guide me. The only time where I'm very I don't want to say strict, but I kind of implement a more strict schedule is her last nap of the day and bedtime, because I want to make sure she has a good feed before bed. So I'll typically, like her last nap of the day, I'll put her down, and instead of feeding her when she gets up from her last nap of the day, we wait until right before bedtime. So that's the only time where it's like the time matters. The rest of the day, I'm just feeding on demand, or generally every 3 hours or so, typically when she wakes up and then when she wakes up from every nap. So that's her current schedule. More recently, I think it was 2 weeks ago now, we decided to add in some formula. And it wasn't because she's not growing optimally. Her curve on the chart at the doctor is she's progressing and growing well. It was less about her and more about me, honestly. I personally know that I'm not going to breastfeed for the first year or more. That just does not interest me. And I think that's okay to say that. Like, you matter too. Your mental health matters. How you want to do things matters. And I feel like for a little bit, I felt guilty about that. And I'm sure some of you can relate. It's like, you're producing milk, they're eating well. Why are you going to screw things up? Why are you going to, there's no need for you to switch to formula because you're producing a great amount of milk and she's eating well. But, for me, it kind of like just started when she has slept through the night before. Generally, since she was probably 6 weeks old, has only woken up once overnight to eat. Typically, sometimes it's 2. She did go through slight sleep regression right before we hit 4 months, which I think was the 4-month sleep regression. It wasn't anything crazy. She was just waking up like 2 times overnight, our super early morning wake ups, which I know is normal, but I think like just in my head, subconsciously, I'm like, is she not eating enough before bed? Because she would also during that time like kind of be fussy while she was eating before bed, and I felt like she just wasn't eating a lot, which I think is very common. And I don't think it was an issue. Like, even now, I'll tell you it was probably fine. But I think part of it too is like knowing that I'm not going to be breastfeeding her exclusively for the first year. That's just the decision that I've made. So it can't hurt right now to add in 1 bottle of formula at the end of the day before bed. So that's what we did. there's not really a reason why, aside from that's just what I wanted to do. And I feel like that is enough. If you're listening to this and you are like feeling like you need a reason, you don't. Like, do what works best for you and your baby and your family. So that's what I decided was going to work best for us. I talked to Josh about it. He helped me kind of research formulas a little bit more. And initially, I will say we were very disappointed just researching the formulas out there. It was really hard for us to find one that we felt good about. Because to be perfectly honest, I don't love the ingredients of all the formulas out there. I will say that straight out. Like, I don't love them. So we researched and researched and researched, and I was leaning towards the HIP, which I think is like the Dutch or German formula that a lot of people use. I think it's become pretty popular here in the US too. So I was leaning towards that one, and then he found one called By Heart. And I'm going to pull up some of the reasons why we love it, and why we chose it, essentially, because it, in my opinion, stands out from a lot, if not all, of the other formulas out there. So the ingredients, number one, we liked the ingredients more even than the HIP formula. They don't use corn syrup, gluten, no GMO, no maltodextrin, no soy, no palm oil. So just straight up, the formula was more appealing to us. Number two, they have a patented protein blend that no other formulas, to my knowledge, use. And it's the closest possible to breast milk that you can get. Obviously ideal. They're the only US formula that uses grass-fed whole milk opposed to skim milk, which was also important to us. And then it's processed in a facility that, like, they're made in small batches. It's not mass produced, which allows them to protect the integrity of the formula a little bit more. And then they're also the first formula, I believe, in 25 years that has done a clinical trial. So I think what the current regulations, I guess, are with infant formula here in the US is you have to use previously like approved recipes, like combinations of ingredients. And if you have something completely new, it has to go through a clinical trial. So they're the first ones to have actually gone through with that clinical trial in 25 years. So I'm like, yes, like that's amazing. We love it. I also loved the fact that it's at Target. It's available here. You don't have to order it from Germany, which obviously is just super easy. Like if we're ever traveling, or I mean, if we ever just run low, we can go to Target and get it. So overall, that's why we picked the By Heart brand. I was super impressed. I had never heard of them. Josh found them through research, and I think they're fairly new still. So that's my thoughts on it. That's what we chose for Cora. She has been on it, like I said, now for 2 weeks and is doing really great with it. She hasn't had any significant digestive issues. There was a short time frame where, yeah, it's going to take some time for them to adapt, but no, she's been honestly really great. Again, this is just what has worked for us. I plan to continue to combo feed, so she's just getting 1 bottle of formula per day. I'm still breastfeeding the rest of the day and overnight. I'll continue this for as long as I can and want to. My goal is to get her through the winter, maybe the spring, and then we'll transition to full formula maybe for the summer. But we'll see. I don't have like a set plan. I would just like to get it through the winter and give her the benefits of breastfeeding while also just protecting my mental health a little bit too. That's the breastfeeding video. I hope I answered all the questions that you guys had. If you have any more questions, feel free to leave a comment here or shoot me a DM on Instagram. But just wanted to put this out there somewhere for you to reference as much as you need to. And yeah, thanks for watching. Make sure you stay tuned into the podcast when we have Sam on for all the sleep and baby sleep stuff. Super excited to talk about that with her and have that as a resource for you guys too. But yeah, thanks for watching.